Come with me." A rich boss found a cold nurse at a bus stop, took her home, and she never left. The snow fell harder than ever, covering New York streets in thick, quiet white. It was well past midnight, and the city, usually awake, seemed to have finally slept under the storm. Streetlights made a soft orange light in the fog, and the wind blew loudly between empty buildings. A fancy black car moved slowly on the empty street, its tires softly pressing against the snow. Inside, Alexander Reed sat with one hand on the leather wheel, the other changing the heater settings. The world outside was a white haze, and he had no reason to drive now, but he often couldn't sleep. As he turned onto Lexington Avenue, he saw someone at the bus stop. He looked closely, slowing the car to a quick stop. There, curled up on the cold metal bench, was a young woman in a nurse's uniform. Her blonde hair was wet from snow, her shoulders shaking in a thin coat. She sat rigidly, hands in her pockets, staring ahead. Her phone lay on her lap, not working. It screamed dark, battery dead. Alexander's forehead creased. Without thinking, he parked the car quickly and got out. The cold hit him at once, piercing his coat, but he didn't really feel it. He walked toward her with quiet steps, the snow quieting the sound of his shoes. She didn't look up until he spoke. "You're coming with me." Her head turned fast to him, eyes surprised and scared. "Excuse me? I don't even know you." He looked at her, his voice quiet but strong. "I'm not leaving you here to freeze. That's not happening." She stood up quickly without thinking, moving a few feet away. "I'm fine," she said, even though her voice shook and her teeth clattered. "I'm waiting for the next bus." "There is no next bus," he replied, looking down the empty street. "Not tonight. Everything stopped working. No taxis, no trains, and you're wearing a nurse's uniform in a snowstorm." "I can figure it out," she said firmly, wrapping her arms tightly around herself. He didn't move closer, but his gaze held something that made her unable to look away. Not pity, not desire, something else, like a quiet understanding. He took off his long black coat and offered it to her. "Put this on." She paused, then slowly reached out and put it on. It was warm, smelled a bit like wood and something costly, and quickly made the cold less sharp. "I can take you home," he said, simply. "Where do you live, Farm?" she replied carefully. "Too far to walk and no taxi will get through this. My car is warm and I am not a bad person. You can sit in the back and I will take you where you need to go, or you can stay out here and get too cold. Your choice." She looked closely at him for a long moment. He looked familiar, but she didn't know why. His face had a strong, fine shape. You might see in magazines, cold gray eyes, a well-made suit under a dark, soft scarf, hair just starting to shine with snow. He looked like someone who had never been cold at a bus stop in his life. Though she felt it was wrong, her body moved first. Her legs moved before she spoke. "Fine," she said softly, and he opened the passenger door. She got in, unsure if this was a mistake, unsure of anything except the warmth that instantly covered her. The door shut with a quiet sound, quieting the wind. She watched as he walked around the car and got in beside her, then looked at her once before driving away. Neither of them spoke as the car moved down the snowy street. Two strangers in a quiet car, connected only by a strange moment and the kindness of a man who never stopped for anyone until tonight. The soft sound of this heater filled the quiet. Between them, as the car moved smoothly through streets lightly covered in snow, the windows slowly cleared, showing the shining city covered in white. Inside the car, the warmth was surprising after the sharp cold outside. Lily sat stiff in the passenger seat, her hands still wrapped tightly around the coat he had given her. She pulled it closer, breathing in the new but good scent in the material. It smelled of money, yes, but also of something peaceful, steady, safe. She looked sideways at the man driving. He hadn't said another word since she got in. He seemed fully focused on the road, his face clear in the dashboard lights. Everything about him was very neat. His way of sitting, his watch, even how he held the wheel. "Thank you," she said quietly, more from custom than hope. He didn't look at her. "You don't have to thank me. You were freezing." She paused. Still, most people wouldn't have stopped. A small smile showed at the corner of his lips. "I am not most people." The answer could have sounded proud, but it didn't. It was simply true. They became quiet again, and Lily leaned back against the seat. The tiredness hit her strongly now that she was finally warm. 14 hours working at the hospital without a break. Not enough workers, no lunch break, and a patient needing urgent help during her last hour. She hadn't meant to miss the last bus, but things like that kept happening. Her life was a hard struggle to stay steady. Rent was late. Her second job was reducing work hours, and her student loan collector called very regularly. He turned the car into an underground parking area. Lily's eyes grew wide as they went down into a special way in with smooth concrete and soft lights. This wasn't just any apartment building. "You live here?" she asked, surprised. "Right now," he replied, stopping the car. "Come on, you're staying here tonight." She looked surprised. "Wait, what?" "It's not a question," he said, already getting out of the car. "You need a place to sleep. I have more than enough space." Her gut feeling kicked in. "I can't just stay at some stranger's place." He paused beside the open passenger door, meeting her eyes without trying to make her or beg. "No special rules. I'll take the guest room. Lock the door if you want, but you're not walking out into that storm." She bit her lip nervously. Half of her mind saying this was crazy. The other half tired and worn out, thinking of that frozen bench. After a moment, she got out of the car. Inside, the apartment was even more amazing than she expected. Big windows, warm lights, a bright fireplace, and such deep quiet, it felt special. The space was fancy, but not unwelcoming. It had good style, was manly, not flashy. "You can take the room on the left," he said, pointing toward a hallway. "There are clean clothes in the drawer chest. They'll be big on you, but warm." She turned to him slowly. "Why are you doing this?" He lifted his shoulders a bit. "Because I can, and because I have a good heart." That answer stayed with her as she walked to the guest room. The bed was neatly made. The sheets smelled like lavender, and something costly. Everything was very clean, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like someone lived there, but also knew, like someone who had it all, but felt empty inside. 15 minutes later, wearing a too big gray sweater and sweatpants that were too loose, Lily stepped quietly back into the kitchen. She wanted water, but stopped still in the doorway. Alexander was standing at the stove, cooking. Not a cook, not ordered food, just him in a white t-shirt and dark pants, mixing food in a small pot. He looked over and saw her watching. "I thought you might be hungry." She looked surprised. "What are you making?" "Ramen," he said simply. "Nothing special, just warm." She stepped closer, surprised how ordinary he seemed now. Just a man. Not a very rich man. Just someone who, for whatever reason, had seen her and fed her. As she sat at the counter, he put a bowl in front of her and handed her chopsticks. She stared at him, more confused than ever. This was not what she expected. He looked at her, his eyes hard to guess what he was thinking. "Neither, are you?" The morning light came through the tall windows, making soft, golden light across the guest room. Lily woke to the smell of coffee floating through the apartment, and the new comfort of sheets much softer than she had ever felt. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came back. The snow, the fancy car, the stranger who had made, her ramen at 2 a.m. She found a note on the kitchen counter written in neat sloped writing. There's cab money on the table. You can leave whenever you're ready, but if you want to talk again, call me. Under it, a new $100 bill and a business card. Alexander Reed, Reed Global Investments. She stared at the name for a long minute. It sounded a little familiar. Magazine articles, money blogs, some rich list she had seen quickly at a store checkout. So that's who he was. She took the money but left the card. 3 days passed. She didn't call. But on the 4th evening, while working, a free work time at a local health event run by the hospital, she saw him again. He was standing at the back of the event hall, quiet and still among the busy crowd of nurses, patients, and donors. No big show, no helpers, just him, dressed in dark gray, hands in his coat pockets, eyes looking around the room until they found her. Lily was helping a week-old man into a chair for his free checkup. He had no ID, no insurance, no family listed, just an old coat and a gentle smile. She bent down next to him, speaking softly, taking his blood pressure with the care of someone who believed every person deserved respect, no matter their situation. From across the room, Alexander watched. He didn't move, didn't stop her, but something in his face changed. Something small but deep. When the line got smaller and the crowd began to leave, Lily turned and noticed him. She paused, then went toward him. "You followed me here?" she asked, joking a bit. Also not sure. "No," he said. "I pay for this program every year. I just didn't expect to see you." She folded her arms. "Well, here I am." He looked around the hall. "You volunteer after 14-hour shifts." She lifted her shoulders. "People need help. I know what it's like not to have any." He nodded quiet for a moment, then said, "My mother was a nurse. She used to bring me to places like this when I was a kid. I hated it back then, but now I think I understand." Lily leaned her head. "You never mentioned that." "There's a lot I don't mention," he replied, a small smile on his lips. They stood in silence for a moment. Then he said, "Come with me just for coffee. No need to feel forced." She paused again, but this time she nodded. Coffee turned into a walk. The walk turned into sitting on a bench at the edge of Central Park, where the snow had melted enough to show the ground below. They didn't talk about money or jobs or anything grand. They talked about trouble sleeping, about poor coffee at work, about books they had started and never finished. It became a habit. Over the next few weeks, they kept seeing each other. Or maybe not on purpose, she started to wonder, but she never asked. Sometimes they would meet at the hospital cafeteria late at night. Sometimes he would send a driver to take her to a quiet spot where he was already waiting with hot chocolate or a bag of her favorite chips. He had asked once, simply, and remembered. They never named their connection. They never held hands, but it felt like something more true than anything she had felt. They weren't dating. They were two people learning to live fully again. One night, as they sat side by side on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum, sharing, a quiet filled with unspoken thoughts, she looked over at him and said, "You're different from what people say about you." He turned to her, his voice low. "So are you?" She smiled. "What do they say about me?" "That you are too nice." She lifted her shoulders. "It's not kindness. It's just being human." He looked at her for a long moment. "Then maybe I'm trying to find my own." She didn't respond. She just leaned back and looked up at the stars showing through the city fog. And for the first time in a long while, the night felt calm. Alexander Reed had always been a man who liked quiet. It was where he felt most at ease, most like himself. Success had come early, maybe too early. By age 30, he had built and sold his first tech company, then moved to money deals, where his sharp accuracy earned him fame that made people either want to be him or stay away. But money had never filled the quiet in his life. It just touched the surface. He was 12 when his mother died. Cancer. fast and cruel. She had been a nurse at a small local hospital, the kind who stayed late with sick patients, who brought blankets to the homeless, who kissed her son goodnight even when she was too tired to stand. His father, a cold man who cared only for business, didn't know what to do with a sad child. So he sent Alexander to boarding school and focused only on work papers. By 25, he had millions. By 30, billions. But none of it made him forget his mother. In his private office, hidden behind glass walls and shiny wood, there was one photo he never moved. An old picture of her in her nurse's uniform, smiling at the camera as if nothing could ever go wrong. Lily's uniform had been almost the same. It was the first thing that caught his eye about her, even before her shaking hands or strong voice. He never told Lily. Instead, he began to do what he did best, work quietly. Through secret legal ways, he found her remaining student loans and paid them all. He started a health fund under her name at the nursing school she had once attended. No public news, no thanks. He noticed her hospital had been having trouble keeping its Care for Poor People program going, especially during cold months. A secret gift came with no name, of course, enough to keep it going for the next 3 years. He was careful. He never let her see the things he was doing in secret. To Lily, he stayed just Alexander, strange, quiet, generous in small ways, but never showy. She had no idea how much he watched her life, how often he changed his own plans just to sit in the back of a meeting she might attend, or how he once waited in his car for hours outside her hospital during a heavy snowstorm just to make sure she made it to the night shift safely. He told himself it wasn't about control. It was about making sure she had the freedom to keep doing what she loved. He had seen what being totally worn out did to people like her. He had seen it in his mother's eyes near the end. He wouldn't let Lily have that same burden, at least not alone. Some nights after one of their quiet, informal meetings, he would come home and walk into his office, staring at the photo of his mother. He would think of the way Lily smiled at her patients, of how strongly she looked out for people who had nothing. You would have liked her. He once spoke softly to the picture. You were the same. But he never said those words to Lily. Not yet. He was still learning how to show that part of himself. The part hidden away long ago when a small boy in a black suit stood by a coffin and stopped believing life could be gentle. Lily was changing that with every true laugh, every late-night story over takeout boxes and different cups of tea. She broke down his protective wall he had worn for decades, but she didn't know what he was doing for her in secret. He didn't do it for thanks. He did it because something about her made the quiet inside him feel not so never-ending. And for a man like Alexander Reed, that was everything. The hospital hallway smelled of cleaner and old coffee. Nurses moved quickly from room to room. Doctors gave sharp orders into phones, and the overhead lights made a soft hum like a tired heart refusing to stop. In room 412, a person lay very still on the narrow hospital bed. Her skin pale, her breathing slow, her blonde hair spread on the pillow like dim sunlight from tiredness. Lily had fell down during work right in the hallway between 2 patient rooms. She hadn't eaten in 12 hours, had worked 2 shifts, and was halfway through another when her knees gave out, and her sight went dark. By the time someone caught her, she had already passed out. There was no closest family listed in her file, but someone still showed up. Alexander's black car drove into the hospital parking within 30 minutes of the call. No waiting, no slowing down. When he entered the building, the staff looked up, not because they knew him, but because of the strong feeling of his being there, a man who rarely came to places like this unless big things were happening. He reached her room, opened the door, and stopped. She looked small, too small. Her IV line hung quietly beside the bed, fluids dripping into her arm like soft apologies for what her body had gone through. Her chest rose and fell with hard breathing. He walked in slowly, his steps slow, and sat beside her. For a long moment he did nothing, just watched her. Then he reached out and softly took her hand. It was cold. He held it tightly in both his hands, the way he remembered his mother doing when he was sick as a child. He closed his eyes. When Lily woke up 2 hours later, it was to the feeling of warmth wrapped around her hand. Her eyes slowly opened, and the first thing she saw was him, Alexander, sitting there, sleeves rolled up, tie undone, hair a little messy like he had run his hand through it often. "What?" she whispered. "You passed out," he said, his voice strained. "You're very thirsty and not eating enough." She slowly opened her eyes. "Oh, is that all you have to say?" His voice broke, and when she turned to look at him fully, his eyes were dark as a storm. She tried to sit up, showing pain. "It's not a big deal. I just pushed myself a little too hard." "A little," he said sharply, standing up fast. "You work 2 jobs. You skip meals. You hardly sleep. You think that's nothing?" She winced again, not from pain, but from the harshness in his voice. "Alexander." "No," he said, walking back and forth now, his fists tight. "You should have told me. I could have. I would have helped." "I didn't want help," she said sharply, and the quiet grew between them. He turned to her slowly. Lily's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. "I've always taken care of myself since I was 16. No one ever shows up. No one stays. And I didn't want to owe you anything. I didn't want you to look at me like I was broken." He moved toward her slowly. She wiped her face, feeling bad. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall apart like this." "You're not falling apart," he said gently. "You've been holding the world together with your bare hands." She met his gaze, open and clear. He sat beside her again, more slowly this time, and took her hand back into his, but now he held it tightly. "Not anymore," he said softly. The anger gone, replaced by something deeper. "From now on, you're mine to take care of." She stared at him, stunned. He didn't say it like a man saying he owned her. He said it like a man making a deep promise. Tears fell down her face, and she didn't pull her hand away. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, Lily felt what it was like to be seen, to be cared for. Not because she asked, not because she earned it, but simply because someone wouldn't let her hurt alone. The move happened without talking about it. There was no formal moment, no marriage offer, no named boxes or signed papers. One evening, Alexander had offered to drive Lily to her apartment, and she had simply said, "I don't really live there anymore. Do I?" He had nodded once, and from that moment, her things began slowly showing up in his space. They never spoke of it. They just got used to it. Her nurse clothes were folded next to his suits in the closet. Her toothbrush stood next to his in the bathroom. He made space in a drawer in the kitchen for her tea and left a soft blanket laid on the couch because she was always cold. Still, there were no soft "I love yous," no dinners by candlelight, no arms pulling her close in sleep. At night, he took the sofa. At first, she thought it was him being a gentleman, then maybe feeling uneasy. Then she realized he was afraid of something he couldn't put into words. He was learning how to be close, but learning slowly. Alexander showed he cared without words. Each time Lily worked a night shift, a warm container of her favorite food would be waiting in the staff fridge with a note taped to it. "Eat, please." Her photo, a natural photo he had taken while she laughed in Central Park, sat framed on his desk in the office where no one else ever entered. When she once forgot her coat at home, a delivery person showed up at her hospital with a brand new one. Well-made, fancy, and very costly. He never said, "I miss you." But he started canceling meetings just to walk her to work. She knew he cared, but she didn't know if he knew what that meant because there was still a wall, a quiet, soft wall she couldn't climb. He never said how he felt, never reached for her hand in public, never once asked her to stay the night in his bed. Not because he didn't want her, but because perhaps he didn't know how to need anyone out loud. And slowly, that quiet began to tire her out. One evening, Lily returned from work to find the apartment quiet as usual. The lights were dim. A fire burned in the fireplace. Her favorite book sat on the arm of the couch just as she'd left it, but he wasn't there. She found him in his office staring out the window, the photo of his mother beside him, her own photo just inches away. She stepped inside, her voice gentle. "You always look at that photo when something's wrong." He didn't. "Turn. It helps me remember." Remember what? His quiet was long. That people like her and like you still exist. She swallowed hard. "Alexander," she whispered. "What are we doing?" He finally looked at her. "What do you mean by this?" She pointed between them. "We live together. We talk. We share meals, but we don't touch. We don't say things. I don't even know." "If you want me here." "I want you here," he said too quickly. "Then why does it feel like I'm a guest in your life?" Her voice broke. "Why won't you let me in?" He looked down, jaw clenched. "Because once I let people in, they leave." "I'm not people," she said. "I'm me." "I know." His voice was low. That's what makes it harder. She stared at him for a long time, then said softly, "I love you, Alexander. I think I have for a while." He looked at her, eyes wide, but he said nothing. The quiet lasted too long, and that was when she knew. She nodded slowly with a sad smile. "That's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to say it, but I can't keep waiting for a man who can't decide if he's able to feel." She turned and walked out of the office. That night she packed her things. He didn't stop her. He stood in the hallway, one hand on the door frame, his lips apart, his whole body tight as if fighting an old, tough battle. But he said nothing. When the door clicked shut behind her, the quiet in the apartment changed. It was no longer soft. It was crushing. The quiet she left behind was very loud. For days, Alexander moved through his top-floor apartment as if in a daze. The fire in the fireplace burned slowly. Her blanket remained on the couch untouched. Her teacup still sat in the sink. Her scent stayed on his coat, and he found himself standing in doorways looking for her without intending to. Meetings passed without his focus. Investors called and were ignored. A deal worth millions was put off, something he had never done in 15 years of business. His assistant knocked gently on his office door one afternoon. "Mr. Reed, the Tokyo board is waiting for your approval." He stared at the photo on his desk, the one of Lily, the one he couldn't bring himself to move. "Cancel it," he said. The assistant looked surprised. "Sir," I said, "cancel it." Then he stood, took his coat, and left the building without another word. He needed to find her. It was late when he arrived at the hospital. Snow had started falling again, light but constant. The city was busy around him as he walked through the glass doors, the air inside clean and bright, so unlike the warmth she used to bring to it. At the front desk, he asked for her. The nurse looked at the screen, then frowned. "Lily Bennett," she said. "She moved 2 weeks ago." His heart dropped. "Moved?" "Yes," the nurse said kindly, busy. "She no longer works here." She didn't leave a new address. He stood there for a long moment, shocked. The lobby was full of patients, doctors hurrying past, the machine sounds, but he heard none of it. She didn't even say goodbye. He spoke softly. The nurse looked up, understanding. "Are you family?" He paused. "No," he said quietly. "I guess not." He stepped outside, the cold air sharp on his skin. Snowflakes fell onto his coat and disappeared at once. He walked out into the hospital outside area and stopped at the center, surrounded by quiet benches and empty trees. His chest felt tight. He turned his face to the sky, eyes getting wet before he could stop them. "She was the only thing," he whispered, voice breaking, "that made me human." And the snow kept falling. Winter returned to New York with quiet falling snow and a gentle feel that made the city softer. It had been a year since Lily left. A year since she walked away from the man who hadn't yet learned how to love out loud. Now she was different, more firm, more sure. As head nurse at a small hospital in upstate New York, she was looked up to and depended on. Yet on quiet nights with tea in her hands, she still thought of him, still wondered if he had searched for her, still felt the memory of his unsaid words. Then came the call. Her aunt had a small stroke, and Lily returned to the city to care for her. She moved into a small rental near the Upper East Side, telling herself it was temporary. One snowy morning, she walked on streets she knew and naturally went into a small flower shop she once loved. The same one where long ago she'd seen Alexander picking flowers for a kid. The bell rang. There he was, his back to her, tall and still, taking a flower of white tulips from a display. She stopped still. He turned, their eyes met, and for a moment, everything felt still. Alexander looked older, more understanding, kinder, but still entirely him. He put the flowers down softly and stepped toward her. Close, but not too close. "You're coming with me," he said, his voice low. The words echoed from a year ago, but now they felt true and honest. He stopped, eyes firm. "If you still want to. I never stopped waiting." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She nodded, couldn't speak. He took her hand with care and soft wonder, as if afraid it might disappear. But when their hands joined, it was with the sureness of someone who knew what losing felt like, and who would never lose it again. He brought her home, not to a fancy apartment, but to a warm apartment on the edge of Central Park, a place filled with plants, soft light, and small details that reminded her of herself. Her blanket, her photo, her memory always held dear. "You kept everything," she whispered. "I kept you," he said. 6 months later, they married on a soft summer morning in the garden of Alexander's old family home that was made new. Laughter filled the path and the air. Guests were not many, but special co-workers, old patients, friends who had seen their story happen. Among them sat the old man Lily once cared for during a hospital money-raising event. The very moment Alexander had really noticed her. He stood up to speak during the ceremony. "She's always been an angel," he said through tears. "Now she's found her protector." Alexander spoke his promises without reading. "I didn't know how to love before you," he said. "But I promise every day I'll learn with you." Lily touched his cheek, her voice soft. "We'll learn together." That night, long after the last guest had gone and candles burned low, they sat wrapped in a blanket on the porch of their new home, the quiet of a summer storm in the distance. Lily leaned against him, smiling. "I never thought a freezing night at a bus stop would bring me home." Alexander kissed her hair, his voice a soft sound in the wind. "That night," he said, "I didn't save you." He turned her face gently toward his. "You saved me." And that was the story of a freezing night. A quiet man and the woman who taught him how to love. Sometimes the people who save us don't arrive with big acts. They come wrapped in quiet kindness, late-night ramen, and a hand held in silence. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love can begin in the most unexpected times, please don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more real-life-inspired tales that make you feel better, lift your spirits, and stay with you long after the story ends. Until next time, stay warm, stay kind, And remember, sometimes the smallest meeting can change everything.